the creative process. I had never experienced any kind of real grief until I was pretty deep into my 40s. I was lucky, I suppose. Both my parents are still alive, and my grandparents lived long enough that when they died, it felt like their lives should be celebrated rather than mourned. The closest I had come to that horrifying, soul-consuming state, grief, was when I was 7 years old and my dog Hobbit died unexpectedly. I wept with a fury that was unprecedented in my experience. And I can still remember rolling around in the back of our Chrysler station wagon, renting my clothes in impotent rage as I processed the news. How could it be that this loving constant in my life could be removed without so much as a nod toward my feelings? How could life possibly be so arbitrary and cruel? I recovered, of course, and quicker than I really thought possible. And my subsequent brushes with grief were far less absolute. I mourned the end of high school with a kind of ache that I now recognize as grief, processing the passing of an irretrievable period of my life and coming to terms with its end. Weirdly and totally unexpectedly, my daughter's graduation from preschool created a similar pain, a longing for a time of sweetness and joy that I could see was now behind me. But when real grief swamped me in my 40s, I was totally and wholly unprepared for its force. The news came over Facebook, as all bad news did in those days. This was in the period when the social media platform had morphed from a place where you saw photos of your friends and their kids to a place where you mostly got updates on people's cancer progress and death. There was a photo of someone I recognized but weirdly couldn't place. It was a formal portrait, the kind you might get for high school graduation. A girl in her late 20s, her hair piled up in a small beehive, her torso wrapped in dark tulle, a thin, bemused smile on her face. This was not the hippie love child I had known at boarding school, but the twinkle in her eye was both irrepressible and unmistakable. It was Maggie Cassidy, the first girl I had ever fallen in love with, the girl in whom I had lost myself completely in those blissful, fleeting months of the spring term of my senior year, when all the world unfolded before us with so much promise. The photo was accompanied by a plaintive note from her sister, mourning Maggie's death. My initial reaction was confusion. It was just impossible for me to perform the math. The stranger on my computer was also somehow my first love, and was also somehow dead. Again, it felt like a cruel affront that no one had bothered to consult me on this. How could the powers that be make such a radical choice, one that had such a profound impact on me, without my prior consent? I slept-walked through the rest of my day, my confusion mostly numbing my sorrow. But later that night, when I was lying in bed, I felt a sudden sharp pain in my side, like I had been pierced with a spear, and it slowly migrated to the center of my chest where it sat over my heart and began to throb. That night I started to cry, and I did not stop for several weeks. I cried on the stairs of my house, in my car, at the breakfast table with my kids. Grief overcame me in a way I had never imagined. It was like a hunger, and part of me believed if I cried enough, the hunger would be sated. But as soon as I was spent, its urgency reasserted itself over me, when I'd least expect it, and I would burst into gut-wrenching tears, horrifying strangers in their offices and colleagues at restaurants over lunch. No amount of sobbing seemed to satisfy its need. At first, my wife was sympathetic because she had known Maggie too. We had all been friends in boarding school. But after stumbling in on me one too many times, weeping by myself in the living room in the dark, she had to ask, what was going on? What was it I wasn't telling her? And I could barely answer myself because I couldn't believe it was true. If I'm completely candid, I did not believe at this point in my life that I was still capable of this kind of emotion. I've since learned this is not the case. And yet here I was at 45 years old, wandering around lovelorn and lost. I was as raw and throbbing as I'd ever been when I was an 18-year-old. What was going on? I was embarrassed to admit it, but it felt like I was suffering from a broken heart. At some point, the people in my life, my family, my wife, my friends, all suggested I should go get some therapy. And I agreed because I just wanted somewhere I could be and cry in private for an hour every week without upsetting everyone in my life. For this alone, I figured therapy would be invaluable. But there was something else. As awful as this was, to be this wounded and exposed, it was also intoxicating. I was back in touch with all the hope and fear of my youth, the limitless possibilities of the unexplored expanse of my soul. I was ecstatic and alive, and while I wanted to stop crying, I needed to stop crying, I also did not want to ever again lose touch with this mysterious excitement I remembered from my youth. I thought a therapist might help me harness that. Somewhere, I believed I could use this. Perhaps, I thought, I could turn whatever this was into art. And it was during this period, while I was groping around in the dark, that I was offered an opportunity to do some stand-up comedy. I hadn't been doing a lot of stand-up during that period because I hadn't been feeling very funny. Still, I had never turned down a stand-up invite, and I was not going to start now. I feared if I ever said no, I might never be asked again, so I agreed to the gig. Professional comics tell the same jokes over and over and somehow find ways to keep their material fresh, to make you feel like they're telling this joke for the very first time. I can't do that. I get bored of my own jokes pretty quick, and they get stale in my mouth after a couple tellings. I'm always trying new things, new approaches, new jokes. It's not really a recipe for success. But telling a bunch of canned jokes doesn't work well either. I generally try to find a balance between old and new material that feels fresh enough to me that hopefully the audience feels it too. On the morning of my gig, I was sorting through a list of old jokes and writing some new material in an attempt to compose a coherent set, when I realized that one of the aspects of Maggie's death that had made me most sad was the fact that I had not only lost someone that I loved, but I had also lost someone that had loved me. And I wondered at the mystery of that, how this magical girl had ever wanted a malformed thing like me. And then, of course, comedy provided me with an answer. What if Maggie, or for that matter, any girl who'd ever loved me, hadn't loved me because I was cute or funny or rich? But what if they had fallen in love with me because it turns out I have a perfect dick? Now, I'm not saying I have a huge dick, and to be clear, I'm not saying it's small either. But what if it's just perfect? The Goldilocks of dicks. Well, this struck me as just about the funniest thing I'd ever heard, and the jokes just started rolling in. It's an affable dick, the kind of dick you'd feel good about bringing home for Christmas. In fact, it's the kind of dick your mother might love. I was pitching these jokes to my wife as quickly as they popped into my brain, and she, the toughest audience in America, was actually laughing. In fact, she was like, at some point, the audience is going to want to see it. You're going to have to show them your perfect dick. She was, of course, joking. But you see, at the time I was going through all this, I was also doing a little improv and reading about the great Del Close and some of the stunts he and his cohorts pulled off back in the day that redefined the very nature of comedy and its relationship with the audience. There was one instance, I'm probably botching this here, where they had a guy pretend to commit suicide by jumping off a building, his fake body thumping down on the sidewalk in front of the audience. How's that for comedy? The exciting part to me was that the audience included anyone who might witness the event. Not just invited guests, but also cops, civilians, and innocent bystanders. No one could predict how these various witnesses might react. Inevitably, they would become part of the performance itself, and that would send the performance down paths no one predicted. In fact, that was the point. And it sounded so exciting to me to be a part of a performance whose outcome was unknown and unknowable. And it occurred to me as I was working out this set of dick jokes. It's a straight dick, you know? Not one of those curve numbers where you're not sure whether you should hang a hat on it or hitch it to a boat hook. That perhaps I could turn this set of dick jokes into a classic piece of improv if I got to the point in the show where I was like, you guys want to see it, right? And offer to whip it out on stage. And then who knows what might happen. In all likelihood, the producers would stop me from dropping my pants, right? Or the host would stop me, or the management of the club. Of course, it was also possible they would not. And then what? Would I have the balls to actually do it? And if I did do it, what would happen next? Would security rush the stage and pummel my kidneys? It felt exciting to build to a moment in the act where the plan was to not know what happens next, and where even I wasn't sure I could go through with what was proposed to the audience. Now, to be clear, I've always been deeply embarrassed by my naked body. I have very little muscle definition and practically no body hair. I'm like a monkey that's part chicken and part pot-bellied pig, and I'm particularly self-conscious of my dick. I don't care how many millions of times my life experience has proven it completely unremarkable, statistically above average by every metric. It still looks and feels minuscule to me. So on the day of the show, I ran through the set in the bathroom at work in front of the mirror and tried pulling down my pants at the key moment to see how it would look on stage. It was not good. How, it makes you wonder, can we imbue so much power into something so defenseless and weak, shriveled and sad? I mean, it was, in a word, gross. Any fantasy I might have harbored about actually having a perfect dick was dispelled immediately by a single glance in that mirror. I realized that going through with this stunt would be an incredibly bad idea. That realization was strongly reinforced when I arrived at the Comedy Store. At my level of comedy, producers are counting on you to bring your own audience, but you never know who is going to actually show up to any given gig. Sometimes it's no one, and then the producer punishes you by refusing to put you on stage. Or maybe it's just one person who owes you big. I always hang out on the patio of the Comedy Store before the show and glad hand anyone who's turned up for me. In fact, I'm usually funnier in the few minutes I spend with friends on the patio than I am for the few minutes I spend on stage in front of the crowd. It's one of the maddening conundrums of my comedy career, one I became obsessed with one day solving, and one that I never did. But on this night, as I navigate the sparse crowd, I stumble across a minefield of supporters. There's a former boss. Okay, that's challenging. Pretty sure they've never seen my dick. There's also a former colleague who used to have a huge job in Hollywood, but he and I have played tennis together. He's seen me naked in a locker room. There's nothing new here for him. But as I come round the bar, I spot the head of advancement from my children's elementary school, a guy with whom I have been working with to raise a multi-million-dollar capital campaign to renovate every building on campus. In his mind, I'm not some struggling comic trying to find a path for myself. I'm a pillar of the community, a guy people look up to. He's counting on me. I can't just throw away my reputation as a respectable family man over my curiosity to explore the implications of pure improvisational comedy. I realize I have to rework my set. So as the show starts, I pace around the parking lot of the club, working up an alternative set, jokes I've told in the past that I can quickly throw together in lieu of my dick jokes. I don't know enough about comedy to really know what you're supposed to do to prepare for a show. How well should I really know these jokes? If I know them too well, will it be canned? If I don't know them well enough, will I fumble and lose the audience? Still, I've told these jokes enough that by the time they call me to the stage, I'm confident I can muddle my way through my set and not disappoint the producer or the people who have shown up to see me perform. The truth is that while I may pretend to take comedy casually, I care deeply about what I'm doing. I work hard at comedy, and I take it very seriously. I want to get better at it. I want to unlock the mystery of what makes me funny. And as I hop through the audience on my way to the stage, I do remember this much. I have never failed at comedy by taking too big a risk. And so I start telling my dick jokes. And really, I don't know how or why, but they are killing. Sometimes I think the audience will only laugh if I just truly, deeply believe a joke is funny. Or maybe the audience will only laugh if I just think I'm a total loser. Or perhaps the audience will only laugh if I just remember to think absolutely nothing at all. It's a dick with humanity, not one of those alien dicks where you can't tell, like, where's the face on this thing? Maybe it's only funny if I'm out on a limb, terrified, wondering if I can land the punch. And that's certainly how I feel that night. The audience feels it, and it's working. In fact, it's working so well that by the time I get to the moment where I'm supposed to ask the audience if they want to see it, I don't really need to do more. My work here is done. I can just wave into the spotlight and say, "Thanks, I'm Nick Morton," and walk off stage. But I just cannot resist the siren song of the unknown. What lies in the dark beyond the pool of previously explored light? I want to know. I have to know. I take the plunge. You guys want to see it, right? I growl into the microphone. The audience is confused at first. A few people chuckle uncomfortably, but then I call out to the producer, "Hey Vargas, can I whip out my dick on stage?" But there's no answer, so I holler to the host, "Sally, is it okay to pull my pants down out here?" And she doesn't answer either. But now the audience is riled up. They know what's going on. "Show us your dick," someone calls out. I shrug into the mic. Should I do it? And they all scream, "Yes!" And I realize in horror that I've painted myself into a corner. No one is stopping me. No one is rushing the stage. No one is telling me I cannot do this. No one is going to save me now. I've already tested this out. I know that all I have to do is unhook one button, give a slight yank, and my pants and boxers will fall to my knees. Before I can give myself a chance to chicken out, it's done. And I can feel the elastic of my underpants clinging to my thighs. Part of me can't believe I've actually done this. So I shake my hips just a little, and sure enough, I can feel it waggling around down there in the open air. I see a woman in the front row, big head of hair teased into a gauzy crown. Gasp. Is it horror? Delight? Her hands fly to her mouth, and she doubles over in her seat. There's really nothing quite like the roar of a room laughing at your act. Alone in a pool of light, you stand behind a microphone and show the audience the very worst of yourself. I'm an alcoholic with crossed eyes and a middling sex organ. I don't totally understand the alchemy that turns that into entertainment, into laughs. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But when it does, it is nothing short of magic. I've come to believe there's something in it that is holy. A room united in laughter, not even necessarily laughing at the same thing, save their shared humanity, their shared human experience. It happens tonight. The laughter is a wave big enough that it is hard to actually ride. I pull my pants up, tell a few more jokes, and quickly get off stage. I share a couple high fives as I make my way to the back of the room where the comics linger. I'm giddy with the audience's reaction, but sheepish too. I know I've gone too far. And a couple of the club's managers immediately materialize and flank me against the back wall, proving my point. They are pissed. Are you the guy who pulled out his dick on stage? They asked me. And I see now this is the kidney pummeling I feared. But it's happening off stage. Too late to save me. Their anger is scary enough I opt for a flat denial. No, I tell them, it's not me. And they turn and walk away. I'm stunned by how easy it is to get them to back down. But they come back almost immediately. Everyone says you're the guy. Did you actually pull your dick out on stage tonight? This is getting kind of interesting to me. It's at least distracting me from the chaos I've created in the room. Also, their stupidity is emboldening. What if I did, I ask? Then we would throw you out of this club and you would never be able to perform here again. On some level, this delights me. The danger is real. But it also scares me. It scares me I've recklessly tampered with something I hold so dear. In that case, I say, with a bit of a shit-eating grin on my face, I didn't do it. It's the answer they want to hear. On some level, they want to let me go. The show was good. I'm sure they can see the value in that, even if it was unlawful. They eye me warily and nod. Good, one of them says, somehow deploying the word as a monosyllabic threat. And then they walk away. I'm off the hook. After the show, people don't really know what to say to me. I can tell they think what I've done is crazy. I can see it in their eyes. And it is crazy. I know that. Doing stand-up is crazy. But so is sitting home at night in front of the TV, stuffing your face full of Cheetos. Life offers a whole range of crazy. It's hard to avoid. This is the crazy I choose. I'm not sure there's anything wrong with that. Driving home after the show, I call my wife and tell her what I've done. And she is furious. Appalled. Like, what is wrong with you? Appalled. Like, what have I married? Appalled. She asked me what was going through your head up there. I mean, seriously, Nick, what were you thinking? What was I thinking? Honestly, I thought I was making art. And as crazy as that sounds, it's also true. And I still basically believe it. For a few manic moments up there, I was as alive as I had ever been in high school. On stage, pushing that show toward the unknown, I was on fire with the limitless possibilities of life. Who knew what would happen next? And I couldn't wait to find out. In this small act of creation, however puerile or misplaced, I had reconnected with the energy of my youth and had found just a small bit of comfort from my grief.